to everyone for our third session of Your Sustainable Home. This is a 10-week program all about sustainable living. And today we've got Sam Kelly, who's my colleague at Rooftop Council, who is our energy expert. He's here to talk about how we might be able to reduce energy consumption, go greenest possible option. And my name is Julian Lee, the Sustainability, Ground Sustainability Hub. This building that we're in, which is called the Outdoor Classroom, we're down at 27 Winter Street. The Outdoor Classroom has been passive solar designed. So if anybody's been here on a hot day, it's actually surprisingly cool without using any electricity at all. And it's all about the design. And same in winter. So there's a lot of things at this building that will embody some of the things that Sam will be talking about. The other thing to mention is that we're on Gadigal and Bidjigal land, so I'd like to pay our respects to elders past, present and emerging. And what else do I need to mention?
Just that this building here is like the state of the art for energy saving. So, I'm sure as we're going through, we can point to some of the stuff that is going on in here. As yes, really great use for house as well.
Perfect. Okay. So I'm going to hand you right over to Sam. And if you're on Zoom, please feel free to actually speak out while you're here. Okay. What you're saying.
Easy. Can I just get the presentation up?
Sure.
So yeah, my name is Sam Kelly. I work in Rooftop Council sustainability team, generally doing energy and emission reduction projects for the council and community. We're good, all good?
I forgot that we're meant to do the recap. That's why I was at number 2. But I reckon let's carry on.
Okay, we'll keep going. So I put together a couple of slides about how to save energy at home and find, cheap energy retailers, find green energy retailers. But obviously, I think everyone who works in this space is constantly learning in this space. So I have my trusty pen and paper. So if any questions we can't answer, I'll write them down and I'll get into Julian to make sure we can, get some answers out. It's handy having a smaller group because you might have a bit more time for specific questions for houses. So as I'm going, make it very informal and just jump out with questions or clarifications. This is a new presentation I put together.
I'll just interrupt for a second there, sorry. Hi Penny, welcome to the group. We're a relatively small group, but it'd be lovely. We've got 10 people in the room. It'd be lovely to see you so that you're part of us. So if you're up for putting your video on and turning your audio on, we definitely encourage you to ask questions. Hey, hi Penny.
Hey Penny.
Thanks. And you can take yourself off mute. We're not one of those sorts of meetings. Say hello.
Hello.
I'll just show you, just for here we are. So you're here with all these friendly people too.
Oh, lovely.
Cool. And this is Sam, who'll be giving the presentation.
So as a quick summary of what we're going to be doing, it's basically why energy. Energy is built in the sustainability team. It plays a big part in sustainability. So I want to quickly recap why energy is a focus for most sustainability teams. We have a couple of activities around energy use in the home, breaking some of the barriers that people are facing to reducing energy use, and then obviously just some quick energy saving tips. Easy. So very quickly, this here is a graph showing the sources of emissions across the globe. And as you can see here, energy represents about 70%. So that includes energy for things like fuels as well, and houses, electricity, gas. So that's the reason that when people talk about climate, talk about emissions, often the discussions do lead towards electricity. And interestingly, some politicians recently have been talking about trying to remove agriculture out of any sort of emission reduction plan. I'm not sure if you saw this, it was very controversial, but obviously you can see here why that wouldn't be the best idea, because agriculture also plays a big role in emissions.
And National Farmers Federation
came out and said they wanted the opposite.
They're too important to leave out.
Yeah, exactly.
Because farmers are one of the few people that can actually put carbon back into the ground.
Yeah. So this is kind of very on topic of what we were just talking about, where energy is used in the house. We have some questions about, hot water systems or phone usage. So this here is a graph showing the average energy use breakdown by energy use. across lights, heating, fridge, water heating, and cooking and appliances. And I guess I was hoping to have a very quick discussion, or someone wants to throw out some guesses as to which of those categories align with the percentages. So maybe starting for the highest, anyone have a guess of what is generally, this is the average Australian energy bill, generally the highest use of energy in the house?
Heating and cooling.
Cooling. Anyone else? Fridge. Fridge. Often people say fridge is on 9 o'clock. Swimming pool. Swimming pool.
Water heating.
Yeah. Netflix, you know.
What about you, Penny?
Yeah, I think heating and cooling.
Yeah, definitely justified guess there. If you jump across to the next one, we'll do the big reveal of the answers. So I'll again say this is just the average Australian home. So don't get too attached to it. This is just very generally speaking. We've also just done a breakdown based on the average annual electricity bill a year. So if you had the average energy bill, you have the average energy usage, this is how it would be kind of split up. So $750 going towards water heating, followed by cooking and appliances. Cooking and appliances is a big chunk there, but appliances, each individual one isn't so much. It's more just when you group them all together. That's why it shows them a big chunk.
Is this annual or quarterly?
This is per year. Yeah, it's per year. Heating and cooling obviously is the third most, but it's quite a big sector considering that it's usually just one heater or one air conditioner or something like that. So energy usage per device, it's a very high energy usage space. Lighting is usually around the 10%, but I always love to focus a little bit on lighting because it's one of those things that not everyone in Randwick or Sydney can change their water heater or replace their cook stove overnight, but it is a totally achievable goal to have 100% LED lighting in your home and have it pay itself back in like less than a year. So lighting is kind of one of those really low-hanging fruit, and then followed by fridges. So fridges, even though they're plugged in around the clock, they run on what's called a duty cycle, and they're basically just a lot of the time they're just on and being sealed up, and then the compressor will run every 30 minutes or something like that to keep the temperature. So fridges are on all the time, but obviously if you do have like 2 fridges or one in the garage that you don't use, definitely consider unplugging it because if you have multiple fridges, that'll add up pretty quick. And now to have a break from my talking, if someone wants to, or everyone wants to maybe discuss how you try to go about reducing energy in your house.
Can I just ask a question though? Is water heating just like showers and stuff like that, or
hot water.
What does it?
What does it cover? So it covers like the energy that's used to heat the water. It comes out of your shower or going into your washing machine or coming out of your tap. It's usually one central heating source in the house, and that will feed all sorts of all the hot outlets. But yeah, any other suggestions here? Or
I actually turn down the thermostat on the hot water.
Oh yeah.
So we don't use the cold tap. It's like a nice even. Just turn on the hot and it comes up a nice even temperature. And it doesn't have to use more water. And it's not, it does have to reheat again, but it's gas, but you can do it with electric ones.
Yeah, totally.
And it works quite well. I find that people don't stand under it very much.
It works. There is, and I'll add my first thing to my list of things to look up in front of in this space. There's a temperature range where it has to be above a certain temperature to stop some sort of, is it above 60? There you go.
To kill germs.
To kill germs, yeah. So that's why you can't have it down too low. But definitely, if you can reduce it within that limit, which I'll find out for us, it's a great way for sure. And it also just easier when you go to the shower and you can just press hot and it comes out the temperature you want as opposed to
It takes more time.
Yeah. That's great.
Is it worth turning it off when you go on holidays, like even for a week? Because that's what I do. I turn it off my hot water system if I go away for more than about 3 days.
Yeah. Does anyone from the audience want to answer this one maybe?
Maybe.
Yeah.
I've heard it's not that good.
Julian has a first-hand experience of this.
Yeah, so this is not necessarily about whether it's good for your water heater or not. But because I'm with Power Shop and until I've got the graph of how much the water heater is using every day. So if I know I'm going away for more than one weekend, I turn off my water heater 2 or 3 days, if I remember, before I go.
Yeah.
I'm using all the stored hot water, and then I'm away for X number of days, and then, you know, when I get back, I turn it on. And within 30 minutes, it's ready to have a shower again. So it's not a problem afterwards. If I'm away for more than 2 or 3 days, then the amount of electricity it takes to reheat the entire container is less than the amount that I've saved in not using all those days on the way. So it only takes about 3 days before you break even, and any longer than that, you're well in front.
Yeah,
And I'm not going to go anything further, because in summer I actually just don't even turn it back on when I come home.
Actually, that's what I was thinking. Maybe I don't even need to use my hot water system in summer because I often shower and go swimming at the
Exactly. And dishwashers heat the water themselves.
Do they? Okay.
Yeah.
That's the only reason I kept it.
and some washing machines as well.
Okay, shower. Just go cold water in summer.
I should actually add that to my list of like tips to just stop using your hot water system, because that's probably the fastest.
Zero consumption.
Yeah, you can get away with it. That would be
Or even for washing cans, because by the time water comes to the
Yeah.
you're done.
Yeah.
Anyway.
That is a pet hate of mine. It happens all the time where someone will do the hot water so they're brushing their teeth, something like that, and your hot water system will use a huge amount of energy to put hot water through the taps, and by the time it gets to your tap, you've just turned it off and you're away. You know, so yeah, I've seen people put like plastic cups on top of the hot one. So it's just like, not as easy to access. All good suggestions. Plus, sorry, I meant cups.
Wooden
Yeah.
glass.
Okay, I'll push that next.
Okay, any other suggestions?
Suggestions, anything small, insulation or, draft proofing in winter or.
I changed my to LED lights.
Yeah, I mean like,
Incandescent.
well, incandescent, they're like, that's probably the worst of the worst. That's a great saving. You'll see the other page coming up, but the transition goes the incandescents, then the halogens, and then what were the energy saving ones, which are the CFL ones that look like a spiral. And now LEDs have even so far surpassed them that, if you have them, and when they're dying, you should replace them. Yeah, that's good. All good suggestions. So that is now onto the other side of things. If you haven't, there's certain things you want to do in your house. Has there been particular barriers which has stopped you doing them? I mean, around this area, we know about 75% of people in apartments. We have roughly the same amount of people renting. So there are two huge barriers for things like solar or just like, big changes to your house. Does anyone want to share some of the barriers they've had trying to get changes in their home?
Well, I'm saying like we rent, so like there's not much I can do other than like the fact that I barely use hot water other than to shower. So that surprised me that hot water was such a large chunk. I was like, well, people use hot water in their washing machine and to wash their hands.
Yeah,
dishwashers. Because we don't have a dishwasher either, and or air conditioning. So I just open the window and put a fly screen up, and then just leave my window open the whole time.
Yeah.
But I don't know what other changes I can make. To reduce energy. Like I checked my energy bill, and it's not that much. It's like 5.8 kilowatts saving, and that's for me, my sister, and my mum. So I think that's pretty small. I think we're doing well, but I wish I could do more.
Yeah, when you mentioned flash screens, I always think the flash screens should be part of like the energy saving world, because like having a flash screen window on either side of your house is just like a cheap way to
the breeze goes through like on a hot day because we don't have air conditioning. So like if I want to go sleep in the living room, I just open one window and then the other window in the bathroom and just let it flow through, and then it cools down the house.
Totally, yeah, it makes a huge difference too. But a lot of people don't do that because of the flies coming in, when that cold wind comes through after a hot day, and they'll still close up their house. So yeah, flash screens.
Not knowing stuff is one barrier. Any other barriers that you guys have
Being
come
a
across?
renter, like my hot water heater used to be under the kitchen sink, and then they replaced it. The law now requires that it's so far away from any window. So I asked her to put in electric. I said, but the environment she would, so she put in another, it's an instant one, but she lives way down the building. So it takes so long for the water to come that I only use it for the shower. I just wash my dishes with cold water. If it's really crazy, I'll open them up.
Yeah.
So that's the instantaneous gas one that you have. You
Yeah.
said,
Yeah, but it takes, you know, I mean, the shower, I try to catch as much as I can with the bucket. But
it's a lot. Yeah, and that run of the pipes as well. I mean, if they're not insulated, which, you know, a lot of buildings they're not,
And
they just keep going.
I asked for that, and the guy said it would make a difference, and he wouldn't do it.
You can insulate them, though. It is,
Yeah, you can get it from Bunnings or any store, I should say. Yeah, you can get it, like, you can just like, there's like foam wraps that you can,
They've even got slicing with the hole to just slot it on.
yeah, like
All right.
a boot,
yeah, exactly.
like a wetsuit.
Yes.
I'm in a dilemma about solar because I don't get a lot of sun on my place and there's a lot of trees nearby, so I don't know what it would be affecting or not.
Yeah, that's a good question. I can, after the Untitled Chapter, there's a couple of tools you can use which like can map the solar radiation on your roofs and it'll tell you like how much you're getting and things. And yeah, that's definitely one. Like, you know, access to sun is a big one. And so I think we do have to have a list of switch over because this might also help the conversation. We did a brainstorm with our team a couple of months ago about what people were facing and lack of information or too much information. Too much information is should be maybe what they rename the solar industry as. And also the energy sector in general, like, you know, electricity bills. It is just not easy to follow, and solar is like a technical space, so it confuse a lot of people. Being time poor, because not everyone has the luxury of work and a job where they, you know, their job is to research energy and like, you know, understand things. So, you know, not everyone's spend hours and hours researching. Emotional family views. That's one maybe like comes up with temperatures and, you know, air conditioning preferences and the like. So that's definitely something people are getting through. And of course, like, you know, approval and permissions and finance costs. So I'd say there's definitely a couple of barriers. In saying that, there's a lot of really low-hanging fruit. So that's just to be a kind of a mantra of the lecturer at UNSW, who used to just say, you know, there's a lot of barriers and always find barriers, but there's so many low-hanging fruit that you just got to jump on. So hopefully we'll identify some of them today.
I'd just like to add about renting. So one of the barriers that I face in our apartment is during the winters, the insulation is so poor in the apartment. It's like 2 degrees or maybe like 1 degree cooler than outside. So during the day, I'm like, oh my God, it's so cold in here. But when you step outside, it's so much warmer.
Well,
In the summer, it's like excellent. But yeah, in the winters, it's just really cold.
that is a challenge.
Yeah.
With insulation, they say heat like an oven and cool like an SQ. So the idea is it's a thermal barrier. It'll just, no matter what the temperatures are, it'll just slow the transition of heat from the hot side to the cool side. So if you do have it, like I've got it recently installed. I was in on the top level apartment above me and it just made all the difference. And now I've been telling everyone about it. So this graph here you're looking at, again, these are just averages, but just kind of to show, you know, on generally how they would compare. These are all the different options for water heating. Got a new member here. How's it going? We're just doing a quick summary of some of the energy stuff we can do in your house to change and onto the water heating. So hopefully everyone can identify theirs. They're kind of like icons, so hopefully it's similar. But does anyone know if they have a gas storage system? It'll be like a big tube. No. Gas instantaneous, we have at least one gas instantaneous, very common around here. Electric storage, that's most. Yeah, there'll be electric boilers, essentially a big kettle that sits outside your house or under your cupboard. Anyone have rooftop solar thermal? That's kind of like, you know, typically the solar heart units and that things. And has anyone heard of a heat pump other than Kevin and Julian? Okay, good. Yes.
What's a heat pump?
A heat pump, good. Yeah, it's the most amazing technology that no one's ever heard of. It's basically it's a similar size and similar shape to an electric storage unit. The difference between them is how it heats the water. So it looks and feels like one, but uses a different way of heating water, and it uses the same technology that's been around forever. Okay, yeah. Thanks for playing. Quick intermission. So the technology that is used in the heat pump is the exact same technology used in fridges and in split system air conditioning units. So the two ways that electric hot boilers kind of work is the classic electric storage, as we see here, most expensive to have. It's a giant kettle. Inside that big cylinder, there is a spiral, a big metal unit, and they put electricity through that spiral and it gets really hot and heats the water. And that's really energy intensive to do, which is why it is the highest energy user. The other option is something called a heat pump, which again, similar to a fridge and air conditioning unit. It takes latent heat that is in the atmosphere around us, and it doesn't have to be a hot day. Basically anything above -300 degrees Celsius is enough heat. But it takes heat that is sitting in the atmosphere and it uses a compressor to basically compress it down. And when that happens, it releases heat. So it takes heat outside and it squeezes it down, and then as it happens, that heat is released into the water. That's a bit of an oversimplification of how it works, but basically that process is a lot more efficient than just heating the water with a boiler. So does that make sense? I might jump through that quickly, but heat pumps. I do have a photo of one coming up as well, so you can see what they look like. That's it there. So you might have seen on the side of buildings, split system air conditioning, you'll have your air conditioning unit on the wall, like up here, and outside there'll be like a kind of a rectangular box that sits on the side of the wall. So this one here is a unit where they've attached the two together. But you do get ones where this here sits down here, or it's a split. But basically, this fan is taking in air from the atmosphere, like this air here, and it will be compressing it down and releasing that heat into the water, and it uses just nothing. It's pretty impressive. But they're unfortunately just not getting the take-up that they need to be around this way, and I think that's largely to do with just plumbers and maybe people not understanding them. It's similar to, you speak to some electricians and they'll tell you that LED is the best, and then other ones who tried LEDs 20 years ago, didn't like them, have never changed. But then I have friends in Newcastle, and every house there has a heat pump because the local plumber is very much for them. So it's a shame that how often that I should add that to the list of barriers. Just that often energy efficiency is done by tradies, and there's I'm making sure that upstairs on that information.
I guess also one of the things that occurs to me is that the heat pumps are more expensive to buy, and people aren't that good at comparing the cost, the upfront cost, to the savings over time.
Yeah.
So,
obviously it is a lot less, and I think a take-home message here for water heating is that the typical story for water heating is you never think about it, and then it fails, and you tell your plumber to put in whatever to make the family happy again, like overnight, and you do 30 seconds research, and that's it, and then that unit is now locked in your house there for the next 10 to 20 years, and you've missed your opportunity. So I guess one of the actions worth considering, if you're in a situation where you can change your heater, is to just get a quote. Don't commit to anything, but just get a quote for an alternative heater. Just so if it does happen or start to fail, you're not locked into that. Replace it with the same again.
How much more expensive that one is?
Yeah, good question. They are more expensive. So electric storage, I think from memory, like $800 to $1,000 space. And a heat pump's going to put you more like $3,000. But obviously, the savings is much better. What kind of works against us in the hot water bill saving space is that even though your electric storage unit uses huge amounts of energy, it's often on the off-peak tariff. So that means that it's just like, how much energy you use isn't properly reflected in your energy bill in dollars. It is in kilowatt hours in energy usage. So because it doesn't run at a higher rate, the savings aren't as good as they should be. But in terms of emission reduction and energy reduction, it's very significant.
Now you have up there the gas instant.
Yeah.
Now, I have electric instant. How does that compare?
Yeah, it's a good question. And the reason it's not on there is because they're not very common. I mean, in Australia, they are extremely common in like Asia and lots of Europe. There'll be a small electric kind of box next to the shower or under the sink. You might even have one here, possibly. So how do they compare? They're a really great option because, you know, if you go away, you're not going to be using energy to heat water in a cylinder because there's no water being stored. They're a great option. The reason they're not common is because the amount of energy they draw, when they're needed, is really huge. So anyone who's on single phase power or in an apartment can't have access to them. And the ones that they do provide for showers often don't provide enough energy for like high flow showers and things like that. So I don't know how to have a dollar figure there, but they're definitely quite good. But there's a big barrier to people being able to use them. That's an answer to your question. So back onto the quick wins and the low hanging fruit. If you can't change your hot water system, changing how much hot water you're using definitely directly correlates with a reduction in energy usage for your hot water. Because if you're using less hot water, it means that less cold water has to be heated up in your system. If you haven't heard about WaterFix, it should be really high on the list of things to Google. They've actually just added to this list as of last week what they're doing for free. That's because it's worth checking out. Basically, I had this done in my own home. They will send out someone to your house and fix indoor leaks. They will replace the shower heads with modern ones. And Julie and I we are both big fans of the models of shower heads they put in there. Obviously, being nerds in this space, we get very behind, like the coolest energy efficient or water efficient devices. And they use some, top of the range energy efficient shower heads. So really.
So, you remember the early ones? They were horrible. It felt like you were barely getting wet and dribbles. And they're now using really good quality brands. One of them's called Satin Jet. And it does feel, that's the one I've got at home. And it turns out that's one of the models you can get through here. Wow. And it's beautiful. And it's you can barely wet your plants with it. So
what they come out and they provide it for free?
Yes,
it's true. Unbelievable.
So remember, this workshop series is all about taking action sort of immediately.
Yeah.
I'd suggest that one of the things that you do before you leave, get in the car or bicycle today, is call that number. Because it's not year-round free. And different, at the moment it's still free.
Yes.
Right? Okay.
Yeah.
So get it while it's free. They'll come around and give you a.
Does it get the soak out of your hair and shame?
Oh, it's bliss. I wish I was there now. But it's a $90 shower head.
It's true.
Yeah.
Because
installation.
he even brought 2 different shower heads out and said, which one would you like? And my flyer came with my water bill. And my husband didn't believe me. I said, I'll call.
Wow.
And they came 2 more.
So today, ring them.
Yeah.
Be one of the people who gets it for free.
Yeah, and they also do things called
What's their
aerators.
number? It's just there.
Penny's just blocking the number there. It's
One
trying
nine
to
nine
just
$807.47.
But and then they just added to the list as well aerators. Do you know what aerators are? They kind of these things that sit in the end of your tap, which control how much water comes through. So I think they just added to the list there. They'll come and replace them with the most efficient ones as well. You can tell if your tap has a good aerator in. If it has an aerator, it should come out as like a really kind of clean stream of water. Then it has like an aerator in it. If it comes out if you kind of go all taps outside, it will come out spraying and everywhere, and it's no aerator.
Is this available for anyone in Sydney or is it only around the city council?
Everyone in Sydney. But I will flag, we do have a program at the moment called Sustainability Rebates, and certain things they do charge for. So they have a huge list of free things, but they have some things they charge for, like if you want to have, replacement of like big taps or like, different shower heads, big fancy stuff. They're still heavily subsidized, but there is a fee for some of them. But basically, if you do decide you want one of the other ones that there's a fee for, we're also providing a rebate of $100 off that cost. So, for example, one of the things that they do is toilet replacements. And obviously, that's like a bit more of an expensive thing. It might cost you like $300 or $400. If you decide to do that, you can apply to Random Council. We'll give you $100 off that install. So it's definitely worth it.
It's only Random Council.
Only Random Council. Yeah.
So if we want a toilet replacement, who do we come?
Yeah, still there. Yeah, still water fix.
And then if you miss that, once a year, a large German discount supermarket for $300 you can buy a toilet from them, a very water efficient toilet that includes installation and removal of your old one. It's crazy.
And look out for the ad.
Yeah, and the plumber that installed mine said, "This is a good toilet."
Okay, yeah.
He was actually surprised.
Yeah. So water saving, very exciting space.
No.
Do the toilets come with the water efficiency stuff?
Yeah.
It's
Every flush.
Yeah, I never looked at that.
Yeah.
I guess it's as good as yours.
Are the rebates available for rentals as well?
rental as well. All rebates that we have are available for rental. Actually, some of the rebates we have are even better for rentals and apartments. But I'll definitely mention a couple. So we thought we put some Mythbusters in there and address some of the things going on around. This is a question. These questions aren't so much about huge energy savings, but it's more just questions that people have around the house. So you should fill your kettle with hot water. That's the thing that most people ask. Would anyone say yes to that?
I met someone who said that.
Okay, yeah. Anyone say no? Anyone want to justify why no?
Well, it depends on put in as much as you're going to drink. Otherwise you're wasting a lot of energy.
That's true.
You could fill it up and then put it into a flask.
Yeah,
And use it for the next time.
yeah, that's true.
Do we get a cup of poisoning or something from the tank?
I haven't heard that. Possibly. Possibly.
Yeah, that's what I had.
The answer is to heat the water in the boiler, then heat it in the kettle, right?
That's right. Yeah, that's right. So even if you're like you said before, the tip of only boiling as much water as you need is a really easy. Should always consider that. But if you were to put hot water into your kettle, then you're using your big hot water system to heat up the pipes, and you're going to lose some hot water along the way. In your case, all along the way of building.
Thermostat comes on.
Thermostat, etc. With a kettle, if you put a couple of cups of cold water in there, it'll boil that much water, and there's just a lot less excess energy used. So that one is.
Would kettle be better than stove?
It probably would be, because at least like kettles are generally they're a little more insulated, whereas the stove, and also the source of the heat in the kettle is inside the water, whereas a stove there's like a hot base and it's heat going everywhere. Yeah.
The one thing I want to know is boiling water in a microwave more efficient than boiling it in a kettle? Because a microwave is meant to be very efficient.
Yeah. Microwaves target hydrogen atoms from memory, and obviously water is very high.
So when I cook my pasta, then I boil the water in the kettle and then I put it in a pot, right?
Is that right? Is that right?
But that would potentially take less energy than cooking it in a pot.
You've got to be careful with the microwave boiling water in that too, because when you add the coffee or the sugar or whatever, it can bubble up.
Yeah, if you're overboard.
What is your suggestion? What is your way of doing it?
If you cook pasta, I boil the water in the kettle first. Then I put it in a pot, right?
Yeah, that's would be the
That
suggestion.
could be maybe.
Is that
You should.
I
don't do it.
Because it takes very long to heat up on the gas.
Yeah.
I need to pay up to the same
Yeah.
price.
Because then you've got to heat 2 vessels as well.
Yeah, it's all about like kind of that, where's the heat
Need to
going?
measure it.
And you know, if you're using a big pan, it's just kind of spilling out to everywhere. Whereas the kettle, again, the source of the heat is in the middle of the water. But again,
I have another question,
sure.
and that is using your pot to boil your pasta. Is it more energy efficient to use a finished type of a metal pot or a heavy?
Oh.
If you.
See, that's how I get my.
I mean, I would say the thicker one. But again, this is like one of those like much of muchness. There's a little more information on that one. But again, just because it might have more insulation. You know, if it's thicker, the same type of metal, one's thicker, one's thinner. The thicker one will have, you know, a bigger space between that and the cooler outside. So I mean, the inside will heat up quicker. That would be my guess. But again, I wouldn't put too much thought into it. I spend time playing water fix. You know.
I think
it's a good question.
Same lines of like if I'm boiling up quick water or something. But
Yeah, something that cooks.
if I'm making soup and I'm going to cook for hours or something, then it's a big heavy one.
Yeah, so something that you just boil pasta. It's 10 minutes.
Yeah.
For most people, that won't make it. They
Yeah.
won't be able to see any difference in their bill.
Yeah. That's a good question. Probably need to draw more modelling to.
But I think we need a masterclass. You running it, Susan, of everything that happens at your house.
I think so.
You could do a film of it.
Yeah.
Sign me up.
So we don't have too many slides on appliances now because there's like, you know, a million different appliances. Generally speaking, you know, there's a couple of like things that are very common, like, you know, plasma TVs used to be called basically heaters and screens. Like, you know, when you're buying appliances, these star systems are pretty tightly regulated. They, you know, it's an even way of preparing all of them. Obviously, just try and take it into consideration when you're purchasing new devices. And so a kilowatt hour, it's a bit, you know, a quick nerd tangent, but what a kilowatt hour is, which is what energy is measured in. It's basically the amount of energy something is using or the amount of power in watts times by how long you use it. So the two main factors there for electric devices that, you know, that show how much energy it's going to use is what is the wattage and how long do you use it for. So to give you an example, so if you had an electric bar heater, which is famously one of the highest energy users, and it was 2,000 watts, that equals 2 kilowatts, 2,000 watts, 2 kilowatts, and use it for 1 hour, then you've used 2 kilowatt hours of electricity. So a bit of a tangent, but basically the wattage is what you're looking for on the back of those labels when you're looking for energy use. That makes sense? Heating and cooling. Again, there's a lot of low-hanging fruit here, especially for renters, especially for apartments. They estimate your ceiling space is often one of the highest places where heat loss happens, especially in winter because heat rises, and a lot of Sydney homes aren't insulated at all, which makes a huge difference. If you have the option for insulation, it's one of the cheapest options, and we're providing a rebate of $500 at the moment for insulation in Randwick, so definitely check that out. Window coverings, the expensive option is to replace them with double glazing or something like that. But there's a couple of cheaper options. If it's a really cold night, closing the blinds and reducing the heat going across the, so you lose heat when heat goes across a cold surface, like your tiles in the bathroom or your cold windows. So there's a couple of things you can do. Or there is a brand I've heard of called Magnetite, might be a lot one similar, which is kind of like stick-on double glazing. It's like a magnetic strip you put around the outside of your window, and then you get a perspex that's the same size with magnet around the outside, it just fits on. So a couple of options there. If you're going to look into these things, look at it mainly in terms of where you're using the heat in the house. So if you're heating your lounge room, spending time in the lounge room, don't put glazing in your bathroom kind of space. Look where your heat's going in the lounge room. And of course, draft proofing, one of the the best, cheapest, quickest ways to seal up your home. They estimate that if you were to add up all the cracks in the average home, it would add up to, next slide, a 1 meter squared window. So if you think about how much of your energy bill is going to heating and cooling, and then how much of that heating and cooling is going out there, anything you can do to reduce that, has huge flow-on effects for your energy bill. Any questions before we keep moving along?
So with windows, is the best like window covering like curtains? Because currently I have blinds, but I don't know like on the scale of like how energy efficient they are, like what, like if they were to change, what should I be getting,
Yeah, that's a good question. So it depends on if you're trying to stop heat going out in winter, or if you're trying to stop solar heat gain coming through the window in summer. So if you had like a black curtain example, and you close it in summer, they'll still be absorbing a lot of heat and become a heat source in your house. Generally speaking, for stopping heat going through windows, curtains are better. If you do have curtains, there's these things called pelmets. They're kind of like these little, like a wooden or strip that goes across the top of it. So if you do have curtains already across big windows, consider getting pelmets. What happens is basically the heat that rises in your room, or in the room, causes like a heat cycle, and it basically slides down the back of the of the curtains, and it goes round and round. And because it's a narrow gap, it actually speeds up the flow of the air there, which increases the heat flow. Easier to imagine the diagram, but consider helmets. Any other questions there? Was I answer one?
Is it better to like leave the window open a little bit behind the curtain and the pelmet so that the hot air can get out?
So the pelmets thing is probably more so in you want to do that in winter. So in summer, you wouldn't have the blinds closed. Probably you want to, if you don't have air conditioner, then you want to obviously open windows and let air flow through. We'll keep chatting about more things afterwards for sure. No questions. These are just a couple of things that main sources of like leakages in your house, around windows and under doors and floorboards. It says here you can use a credit card to do it. Don't use employment card because it's just like the opportunity to leave it under the floor. And yeah, so these things here cost you like $20 in Bunnings or Martin or wherever, and they'll just pay themselves off like in one winter.
So what's this called?
This is just draft proofing in general. Just things you can do DIY. Do it. Yeah. So there's often there's huge drafts that come up in floorboards. That definitely happens. You can seal them up. Just stick it in. Oh no, so that they're just using a card to test if it's sealed. If you actually want to seal, you probably have to use that squeezing stuff. If you're not handy with that, then we're partnered with an organisation called the Australian Energy Foundation, and they do have a service called weatherproofing. I don't think it's too expensive, but get someone through and they'll check it out for you. Okay, this is always an interesting slide, I feel. Heating and cooling. So you might just go left to right and see who has what in the house. And you can come up with the left part, that's fine. The mantra we usually say is heat the person, not the house. Your house won't notice if it's warmer, but you will. Who uses electric heaters for heating in winter? Anyone? Anybody using heaters? Yep. Gas heaters. You have gas connected. Air conditioners. This is my air conditioners. Julia? Yeah. Anyone have hot water bottles or electric blankets?
Do regular blankets count?
Regular blankets should be on there as the last one. And then obviously fans as well, just heating and cooling. So did anyone know already that air conditioners are the most efficient way to actively heat your home in winter?
Is that a meter?
A heat pump.
So it's like a reverse cycle. Yeah.
So that there is the most efficient way of heating. For the same reason we're talking about with the hot water systems, because these ones here, I'm just pointing Penny at the very far left panel there, but those far left ones are just big electric resistance heaters, whereas air conditioners are using the same thing and getting air from the atmosphere and then pushing it into your home. So obviously, if you can get an air conditioner, they're great for winter. But hot water bottles and electric blankets are just amazing. You can get like hot water bottles. I got one a couple of years ago for like $70, and it's just amazing.
$70 hot water bottle.
So not sorry, electric blanket. It's an amazing hot water blanket. Yeah. It's actually just a water bed. Filled with hot water.
So when I started here, you know, I learned a lot from Sam and continue to do so. But he told me this thing about air conditioning because I grew up with the idea that air conditioning was a disaster, and that the oil column heaters were good. So oil column heaters are resistance, terrible. And so I shortly afterwards got an air conditioner. But before all that, I actually did what Sam suggested was they got fly screens and windows at both ends of the house. So I've got an air conditioner. On the days I do use it, like 5 days a year, and I really appreciate it, on those 5 days it hardly uses any electricity. And the rest of the year I'm using my fly screen covered windows. So, yeah. And I don't feel terrible anymore because actually air conditioners are 4 times more efficient. Right?
Yeah, at least. You know, some of the big industrialized ones you can get like 7 times, 8 times more efficient than the conventional ones. And air conditioners are one of those kind of tricky things that we like, but we don't over promote, because if you got one and you replace one of those electric heaters in winter, then all of a sudden you have a more efficient heater. But if you're replacing your fan in summer, which you currently have with your air conditioner, then all of a sudden it's working the other way. So it's kind of like one of those asterisks. Yes, it's great. Try not to use it too much in summer as well.
But I guess that's why, point out that I've got the window in too.
Yeah.
So I hardly use my air conditioner.
Yeah, cross ventilation is just amazing. So has anyone ever come across this question before? I think it used to circulate, maybe last couple of years. So anyone want to say that you should turn your lights off when going between rooms?
Put up your hand if you think yes.
Yeah, who thinks yes?
You should turn off your lights.
Depends how dark the upstairs is.
This is not putting up your hand.
When you're going upstairs.
Put up your hand. So this includes you, Penny, because you can see it. Put up your hand if you think you do not need to turn off the lights going between rooms.
You might be going to bed.
It depends, doesn't it?
It's like pretty much you should always turn your lights off in between rooms. But I actually haven't heard someone say before, well, what about if it's like still dark and still safety? Obviously that's like, putting those questions aside, if you feel like you're safe and you can see okay, then we would definitely recommend turning lights off in between. I think this myth comes from some of the really old like fluoro batons, like the ones that you guys like do a couple of sparks before they turn on. They do use a ballast to like kickstart the light, but even that uses like not enough energy to justify it. So basically, if you're deciding, it's worth just turning off your lights when you go out of the room. So here's what we talked about before with the comparison of incandescents, halogens, CFLs, and LEDs. Incandescents, you really shouldn't have in your house anymore. Like they're really uncommon. If you
Filament bulbs.
filament bulbs, if you do have
Those
them,
attractive ones we find in restaurants too.
Well, they're now often LEDs.
Just look that.
half of them are. They started making LEDs which look like them, but a lot of them, it's a shame that they've kind of come back though, because a lot of places are doing those retro, like the wires and they look great.
Rapid grids, what do they use?
Rapid grids?
Yeah, well, they had before, they had all the light bulbs outside looked like incandescent. I'm not sure now, since the new guy took over.
Yeah, incandescent is like a cool retro look. If you're looking for that, it is LED. Alternatives, I'll keep moving. But basically, the take home here is if you have incandescents, get them changed today. If you have halogens, also get them changed today. There's government subsidies available for them, and there's also random council subsidies available for them. So we can chat about that afterwards if you have them. Yeah. And then if you have these ones here, the CFLs, we generally say if you have them and wait for them to die and fail and then replace them, because they use more than LEDs, but not so much more. Take home message: if you have halogen downlights, Let's talk. Like they are a huge problem, and they're actually getting phased out. They're supposed to already be phased out this year because of COVID, etc. It got moved to, I think it's like September 21. They just stopped allowing them on the market. So basically, halogens and incandescents will no longer be available. So if altruism is a good enough reason to replace them, and your energy bill savings aren't enough, you'll no longer have the opportunity. So
From
September this year.
They're so bad, they'll be illegal.
They're just the worst.
That's
So you've got it. So I think one thing that I've come across is people have got them in their fittings, and then they've got an LED in the cupboard, and they're saying, "Oh, I'll replace it when that's broken." Doesn't make any sense. Replace it now and start saving money now. Don't wait till later to save money.
You have to change all the fittings, don't you?
Yeah.
A bulb that will fit in that.
Yeah.
You can get bulbs that replace them. Yeah.
So they've got the thin ones.
Yeah, so with that one, so with the halogen downlights, there's two different types. There's the 12 volt and 240 volt. 12 volt are two tiny little pins, and then
There's an alternative for that one.
so there's an alternative for both, basically. So it's hard to mess up because you physically can't put the two pins into the other one or vice versa. If you're unsure, take your current one to the the store and just tell them you want an LED replacement.
can you get LED with lower wattage? Because I find them rather glaringly bright. And you can get cool and warm. So you should get warm and warm.
You can get different wattage, you can get different temperature. So I think the ones that I have in my house, just for comparison, I have 8 watt like warm lights at my house, and I find them pretty okay. But you can go down to like 6 or 5 watts as well.
I could get the ones with Wi-Fi that reduce.
But yeah, you can do the smart home lighting is a new thing as well. They're great. They're a lot more expensive though because there's a lot of smarts built into the actual lights you can control with your phone. If you are, I'm not going to have time here, but if you are looking for lights, some things to look out for: the warm and white light people are pretty familiar with. Power consumption. If you're replacing your 50 watt halogen light, this year 7 watts equals 50 watts. It's saying if you're replacing your 50 watt halogen light and you want to find an LED which looks the same and feels the same, then you get one that matches it, if that makes sense. Dimmable LEDs aren't dimmable naturally, and you have to get specific ones that are dimmable. So definitely consider that. And then the fitting. But again, a lot of that can be solved if you take one out and go to the store and ask them for a good replacement.
They last a long time, those LED ones, don't they?
Yeah, the previous slide had.
14 years.
Yeah, there you go. 14 years.
I know.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's what somebody said. But she already, it hasn't even been 10 years. She already has that few lights.
She wasn't shutting them off.
That's not bad. Even that's probably not too bad when you think the old incandescent ones.
They often pop when you turn them on. Don't they?
Yeah.
I'll keep moving just because I'm running behind, I'm so chatty. But if you have a fridge and there's the energy saving option, obviously try and select it. If you have old ones in your garage and you don't need them, get rid of them. And choose your next fridge wisely using those power stars. One quick Mythbuster: dishwashers use less water and energy than hand washing. Who says yes?
Hands up if you say yes.
Depends how you.
Depends how you do it.
Yeah. You gotta love how many answers they got. The actual answer is.
But that's controversial.
Yeah. Who says no?
Put up your hands if you say no. Oh,
On
thanks, City.
Probably
It's
If you can contribute your hand
Yeah.
washing,
It's
if you fill it up or.
So it is true unless a lot of people do a full wash in hot water and then put it in the dishwasher. Wow. So it is true. Generally speaking, if you let it in the dishwasher, because they'll heat the water and then it'll just it's dishwasher really well insulated. They'll circulate hot water around and around. So it's much more efficient.
And there's another thing in here that I think should be on another Mythbuster, is because I've read this is how nerdy. I've read the instruction manuals for dishwashers, and the modern ones invariably say, do not pre-wash them. And it's because the dishwashing powders have food enzymes in them. Because my dad's constantly saying, oh, it'll clog up the dishwasher. I haven't emptied the filter on my dishwasher ever.
Even the environmentally friendly tablets, do they do the same job?
They've all got food enzymes. Because food enzymes are like,
It's down the bottom.
I've done a quick like summary of Rooftop Solar. We're doing information sessions soon on Rooftop Solar. So if you want to know more, come along. You don't spend too much time. It's not always applicable to everyone. So I just kind of go through 4 quick FAQs. Is there government rebates available? Yes, approximately $3,000 a year for a 5 kilowatt array, which is the average size basically. But those costs is usually built in to the cost by the installer. So the installer will be able to give you a price which already factors that in. We're providing Rainy Council is providing another $100 a kilowatt rebate. So basically that's around $500 off in this case. Payback time in Sydney, averaging between 3 to 7 years, depending on how you use energy throughout the day, is a big factor. Again, if you want to know more, do come on to the information session. The batteries, everyone's jumping on the battery train. Are they feasible financially at the moment? Not so much. We're seeing payback times more than 10 years generally, and warranty times at 10 years. So we always say it's still a risk that it'll fail outside of warranty without paying itself off. There is other reasons though, like you can try and stick it to the energy retailer, etc. So can I install solar on apartments or rented properties? Yes, we've done both as part of council programs. It's not on there, they're quite specific and it doesn't work for all cases, but if you want to chat, just get in touch.
no, so that's it for us on Zoom. Penny, thank you for coming. It's fantastic. Would you like to just tell us before you leave one thing that you're going to take away, or in particular perhaps even one action that you might take?
Well, I'm interested in getting solar and I'm very overwhelmed. I've got 3 different quotes and they're crazily different. One's like 5K, one's 25K. So I'm going to email that sustainability email address to get some more advice on that. And I'm also going to check out what sort of water heater we have because I have no idea. I wouldn't even know where it is.
Yeah, great.
Sounds good. Yeah, send the quotes. I'll get back to the quotes.
So look, that's it for our Zoom section of week 3, all about energy. Thank you to Sam. Next week, week 4 is all going to be about gardening, regenerative agriculture, and what we can do in the garden in particular around taking action there. So please join us, sign up for that one. And Penny, you'll get an email asking for a bit of feedback. It's tiny, short. Love to get it from you.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Bye, everyone.
Bye to Penny.
Thank you. Bye.